When Jakob Ingebrigtsen was asked to give training advice on the ProDirect channel, he answered,
"First, consistency.
As a running coach and physio, I really believe that how Jakob Ingebrigtsen has focused on consistency from an early age is the #1 key to why he already at the age of 22 has become both world and Olympic champion. I'm gonna talk about what you and I can learn from Jakob's consistency approach. And how you can implement it into your own training, either if you want to run super fast like Jakob, or if you just want to run injury free and simply enjoy running more. But first, to start understanding the difference from having an approach that focuses on maintaining a good consistency over time and one that just focuses on the current or the next workout, I'm gonna tell you a story. Because Jakob is not the first Norwegian who has had success focusing on consistency. In 1911, the Norwegian explorer Amundsen together with his team set off to try to become the first people to the South Pole. But they weren't alone in this pursuit. During the same time there was a British team racing them to be first. The British team had the tactic to go as far as they could each day, especially on days with good weather. Then they did up to 50 miles in the harsh cold conditions. They thought that pushing as far as they could every single day was the way to get to the pole fastest. And they did some incredibly long efforts some days. But what ended up happening was that they then ended up exhausted and almost didn't do any progress at all some days. Amundsen had a different tactic. He said that they would stick to moving 15 miles each day, no shorter than that, but not any longer either, even if they were feeling good. So what happened? Amundsen and the Norwegian team gets to the South Pole as the first ever, being over 30 days faster than the British team. They didn't only make it there first, they also had enough energy to make it back safely, following the same principle of consistently putting in the work each day, never overreaching, causing unnecessary risk. The British team made it to the South Pole only to find the Norwegian flag hanging there. So why am I telling you this story? Is it because I live here in Norway and are proud to say that Norwegians made it first to the South Pole? No, that's not it. Because as a Swedish person, it's always irritating when Norwegians do stuff better than Swedish people do. But I guess you probably already are understanding why I'm telling you this story. I think it's the most convincing story when it comes to the importance of focusing on consistency. And this is true for everything in life, but how has Jakob used the same philosophy as his countryman over 100 years later in his running training that has made him the best in the world? First of all, never push yourself so hard in training that you can't go up tomorrow and put in another day's worth of work. Or do such extreme sessions that you risk getting injured. For example, if you do one extremely tough interval session that might feel good and productive when you're done, but if you have to rest for a couple of days, or even worse, have pushed yourself over the edge to an injury, that session will end up making you a worse runner over time. What the Ingebrigtsen do in their training philosophy is that although they train a lot and a lot of hard workouts, they have extreme control over their training, knowing exactly how hard they can push and how much they can train to still recover to continue doing the work day after day and year after year. And one of the tools they use to do it with is one of these. So they do a lot of testing during harder workouts where they test the amount of lactic acid in the blood to make sure that they don't push too hard in these training sessions, knowing that pushing just a little bit harder in a session can keep you from recovering fast enough to the next session. So do you need one of these to apply this philosophy into your training? No, although it can be useful, one underrated way of measuring your intensity is your own perceived feeling, that I found oftentimes match up pretty good with how much lactate I have in my blood. If you want to run your intervals more controlled, closer to that lactate threshold like the Ingebrigtsen does a lot of. I think it works good to strive after a feeling in your running where you feel that you run fast and you're pushing without getting that painful feeling in your legs. So with Jakob Ingebrigtsen running his intervals and harder sessions so controlled, many runners might be doing single sessions that are way tougher than what Jakob Ingebrigtsen does. But there are probably very few or any that have had the consistency in their training, putting in good work week after week as Jakob has been having the last 10 years. I actually tried copying a day of double threshold interval training that the Ingebrigtsen has made famous, where they do 2 of these interval sessions in a more controlled pace in a day. And what I found out is that even for me, for sure not being an elite level runner, it was doable to do one of these days. But with my training background that was overreaching, so I wouldn't have been able to do another one of these days just 2 days afterwards, like the Ingebrigtsen are doing without risking injury. And the reason that Jakob has gotten to the point where he's able to do that also comes down to consistency. Having consistency in your progression of how fast you run and how much you run can allow anyone to withstand huge amounts of training without overreaching. Here's an example of Ingebrigtsen's focus on consistency. Jakob was recently asked in a Norwegian podcast if he has resting days, and he answered, never. Being asked if he understands that others have rest days, he said no. And the reason why he doesn't have to have any complete off days from running is that he don't overreach in his training. He knows exactly what his body can handle, and that allows him to run almost every single day and do some proper work each single day and have no real complete rest days. Another recent example of how Jakob prioritized consistency above all else is from 1 month ago when Jakob was signed up to run a 10k road race in Barcelona. After waking up with a sore throat on the race morning, he decided to drop the race. I think many would have taken the chance to run the race, but it's clear that Jakob does not take these kinds of risks that might be tempting in the short term, but will affect his long-term ability to keep doing the constructive training that makes him getting faster and faster for each year. This is something I think all of us can learn from. So if you want to really develop in your running and just keep enjoying it and getting out there without injuries, ask yourself, how much training can I manage to do every week for the upcoming year instead of just the upcoming week? Doing one extreme training session or even a week won't make a big difference. Doing good consistent training for a whole year, on the other hand, will give you results. If you want to see me trying out Jakob Ingebrigtsen's toughest workout, you can click here. Train smart, have fun, and I will see you in the next video.